The wind had carried more than just snow across the shattered battlements of Castle Black, since Jon Snow had vanished into the true north. It carried the ghosts of every vow he had ever sworn, every life he had taken or spared, and every heartbeat that had quickened within him, the moment he realized the world would never allow him to be only one thing. Somewhere beyond the keeping of maps, he had followed ghosts' silent footfalls until the wilderness itself seemed sentient, white breaths of frost rising like spirits among black pines, glacial peaks drumming with unseen wings, and felt the world's pulse echo his own, slow and thunderous. His exile had been meant as a forgetting, but the silence of that hard country had sharpened memory, honed grief into something crystalline and cold as the shards of daylight glancing off frozen lakes. The direwolf halted at the crest of a rise, muzzle lifted, ears pricked to currents Jon could not hear. In the valley beyond, the weirwood grove unfurled like a wound in the forest's flank, crimson leaves clinging to bone-pale trunks, their faces twisted in silent lament. Jon had dreamed of this place, of a fire that burned blue at its heart, and a voice half familiar calling him by every name he had ever disowned. Bastard, brother, lord, King Gawain. He descended without bidding Ghost to follow, for the wolf slipped through the snow like breath through lungs already emptied of air. A shape waited at the grove's edge, garbed in furs so deep a red, they might have been soaked in heart's blood. Melisandre's eyes found him as though the snows between them were glass, her lips moving with a greeting that might have been a prayer or a plea. "You come as ice incarnate," she murmured. "But the fire in you has not guttered Jon Snow." His name, spoken simply, unsettled the stillness. He knew this woman's fire magic, her half-truths and costly visions. Yet in the hush beneath bleeding leaves, her presence felt less a summons than an inevitability. "I've no wish for your prophecies," Jon said, hand falling instinctively to Longclaw's hilt. "No prophecy," she replied. Stepping aside to reveal the grove's heart. A stone altar choked with snow. Flakes dissolving on blackened soot. As if refusing to touch, nestled there was an egg, larger than a man's helm, its shell veined with bursts of opal light like embers under river ice. "Only promise. Touch it, and see what the world requires of you." Jon felt the bone-deep hum before he heard it, a song beneath the world's skin. It pulled him forward. Memory snarled. Dragonfire devouring the Red Keep's towers, screams rising like smoke, Daenerys dissolving in his arms with the taste of ash on his tongue. He shook, but his gloved fingers were already brushing the shell, warmth radiating into him with a lover's certainty. The air cracked. Vision swallowed him. He was a boy again. Sprinting across Winterfell's bailey, chasing Bran along the battlements while Robb's laughter scattered ravens from the rooflines. His breath made small ghosts. In every exhalation he saw another path his life might have taken, if not for bastardy, war, vows, and dragons. The scene melted into another. He thrust his sword through Corin Halfhand's belly and felt honor bleed out with the ranger's life. Then to the wall, his own dagger sliding between Ygritte's ribs in the chaos of battle, her gaze a heartbreak he would never mend. Then to a crypt, his hands around the hilt buried in Daenerys' chest, and though her lips moved to forgive him, her eyes accused. The floor became smoke. In place of memory loomed an endless field where snowflakes glowed like star-shaped cinders, neither ice nor fire but both at once. On the horizon, a shape vast and serpentine coiled above a forest of ice spires, each breath it loosed wreathing the sky in curtains of green and scarlet. Before him stood a figure of flame and frost fused, half its body sheathed in crystal rime, the other half radiating molten light. Eyes white as new snow met eyes incandescent as the heart of a forge. Jon felt the marrow of his bones tug toward it, recognizing the shape as a mirror, one that showed what he might become if he accepted it. He tore free with a gasp, falling to his knees before the altar. The eggshell had cooled to dull iron. "You have seen," Melisandre said. "The Lord of Light and the cold god of death both laid claim to Westeros. They war within you, as they war upon the land." Jon shook his head. "I won nothing from that vision but torment. You won knowledge." She knelt, her breath fogging between them. "Ice alone failed. Fire alone burned the realm. One cannot heal what the other wrought. You must be the tempering, a sword quenched in ice water yet forged in flame. The children whispered of you long before you were born." "Then, Dell." Jon glanced past her to Ghost, who paced the grove's perimeter, hackles bristling. "The children? I've seen no child of the forest in years." "You will," she promised. "When the dragon within that egg hatches, they will come. The wall's spells are broken. The gorge is a wound bleeding magic into the wilds. You stand at its heart with a wolf's soul and a dragon's blood, and the North remembers both." "Them?" Jon's laugh tasted of iron. "The North remembers kingslayers, oathbreakers. The North remembers survival." She cut in. "It remembers winter. And so do you." Her gaze traveled to his scarred chest, to the place where Eliezer Thorne's blades had once pierced him. "Death claimed you once. Fire restored you. Do you think the gods play at miracles for jest?" He pushed himself up. "Suppose I believed you. What am I meant to do? Hatch a dragon in a frozen forest and lead it south? I am no king." "Them?" "Not a king." She agreed, rising with him. "An avatar. The living reconciliation of two powers that have sundered Westeros since the long night. Unite them in yourself, and you may yet make the realm whole." "How?" Jon demanded. But his pulse answered already, drumming to the cadence of that song beneath the world's skin. "Begin by waking the egg," Melisandre said, drawing a small blade crimson with runes. "Blood is the language of both gods. Let yours speak." He recoiled. "I will not sacrifice my blood for—" "Your blood is sacrifice," she said softly. "It was spilt at Castle Black, on Dragonstone's parapets, beneath King's Landing's ruin. It need only remember its purpose." Jon recalled the heat of Longclaw in his hand, the way the steel seemed to sigh when snow melted upon its edge. Perhaps Valyrian blades were not born of forge and sorcery alone, but of a moment like this. An accord between opposites so perilous, its echo sang forever in metal. He drew his dagger, the one Arya had pressed upon him before he rode to the wall. A blade of simple steel, honest, bearing no magic but the bond between siblings. He slashed his palm, crimson welling bright against the frost. With a hiss he pressed the torn flesh to the eggshell. The grove convulsed. Leaves whirled skyward as though flung by an invisible gust, revealing the twilight above. The egg pulsed, throbbing under his palm. The veins of opal light brightened into a lattice of molten gold and cobalt. A crack spidered across the shell, exhaling steam so frigid it glittered. Ghost howled. From the forest came an answering chorus, voices like flutes carved from ice, distant yet piercing. Shapes darted between the trees, small, swift, luminous-eyed. The children had come, bearing spears tipped with dragonglass that flashed midnight blue. Melisandre stepped aside as the foremost child approached the altar. Her skin was dark, bark streaked with veins of pale moss, her hair a tangle of snowy leaves. She spoke in the tongue of old, a sequence of clicks and lilts, and when she placed her tiny hand upon Jon's wound, the pain cooled to a hum. This seed was stolen ages past. She whispered, her common halting. It sought a womb of flesh and flame. Now it finds both. Her jewel-like eyes lifted to Jon's. "We have waited 1,000 turnings." The egg cracked open, a seam widening to reveal a creature no larger than a cat, scales glinting with the luster of moonlit iron. Its eyes were twin coals, one pale blue, one burning amber. It chirped, steam drifting from its nostrils, and unfurled wings lined with feathers of rime at the edges, membrane glowing ember red within. A dragon of ice and fire. Joan's heart lurched with recognition deeper than shock. The hatchling clawed free, staggered onto the altar, and fixed its mismatched eyes on him. When he extended his bleeding hand, it lapped once at the wound, and the pain flared then vanished, flesh knitting closed. Melisandre inhaled sharply, awe, eclipsing triumph. The binding is sealed. But the child's gaze grew grave. The world's wound widens, he warned. Cold gathers at the heart of winter. Fire festers beneath the Dragonmont's crater. You must mend the realms of men before both tear Westeros apart. Jon cradled the dragon, weightless yet potent, in his arms. Its body radiated warmth that prickled against the night's chill, while its wingtips left frost where they brushed his sleeve. Ghost pressed close, sniffing the newborn with wary acceptance, then settled at Jon's heel like a sentinel. How long have I before this war of gods breaks us? Jon asked. Seasons, said the child. Perhaps less. The ice cannot wait for summer's end, nor fire abide another winter. He nodded as though accepting orders from the old bear once more. Yet this task dwarfed any march or ranging. It required reforging a realm forever splintered by crown and creed. Melisandre moved to his side. We ride at dawn to Winterfell. The lords will bend knee to you. They will not, Jon countered, voice low. Not while they remember the chaos my choices wrought. I would not bend knee to myself. Then let them bend to the will of the land. She said. The snows retreat early. Wildfires bloom where none should. They will see a reckoning in you, and they will choose survival over pride. The children melted back into the woods, leaving only the speaker, who pressed a dragonglass blade into Jon's free palm. Bran the Greenseer is king in name, but you are the realm's marrow, she said. He waits for you beneath Winterfell's roots. 1,000 questions crowded Jon's tongue, yet the forest swallowed her silhouette before any emerged. Silence returned, but it was not empty. It throbbed with purpose. He turned to the Red Woman. Bran sent you. Your brother sees paths, not certainties, Melisandre replied. I serve the truth shining brightest. Tonight, it is you. Jon looked once more at the hatchling curled against his chest, its breath swirling in twin vapors. One mist, one smoke. Then we go south, he decided, to face whatever truth awaits. They traveled through snow-melt landscapes, where spring wrestled winter in muddy earnest. At the hostelry of Last Hearth, crofters knelt as Jon passed, whispering of omens. Swarms of fireflies in the dead of night freezing midair, then thawing to fly again by dawn, saplings budding flames instead of flowers. Rumor galloped ahead of them. By the time Winterfell's walls crowned the horizon, banners already fluttered along the King's Road. Sigils of Karstark, Manderly, Glover, summoned by some silent heraldry of fear and hope. Jon dismounted at the gates, the dragon perched upon his shoulder like a living torch casting both light and chill. Ghost padded before him, teeth bared, though no menace showed from the ranks of armored men parted to make way. Melisandre's red silks whispered behind. Inside the great hall, Bran sat the high seat with an expression at once serene and solemn, as though he had foreseen every footstep that brought them here. Arya stood beside him, hand on the pommel of a sword so slender it looked like starlight wrought in steel. Sansa occupied the dais's left, queenly despite the plain wool of her gown, her eyes sharp as winter glass. Jon's breath caught. He had not dared imagine reunion. Yet, even as warmth stirred in him, the hall felt colder than the snows he had left behind. Bran's voice drifted. You come bearing the hinge of the world, brother. Jon knelt, uncertain which of them he honored, the boy he had swaddled in memories long gone, or the strange timeless thing Bran had become. I bring what I never sought. Sansa descended the dais. Her gaze lingered on the dragon, then on Jon's scarred face. Rumors call you savior or doom, she said softly. Which wears you more easily? Neither, Jon answered. But both may be true. Melisandre stepped forward, recounting the awakening, the children's prophecy, the encroaching dual cataclysms. The gathered lords murmured uneasily until Bran raised a hand, silencing them with a kindness more powerful than command. "The wheel has spun to its breaking," he said. "Targaryen fire tried to forge a new realm and failed. Stark ice tried to hold the realm fast and failed. But both lie within our blood." Sansa studied Jon. "The North remembers the king in the North who bent to a dragon queen and saw his people burned." Her voice did not accuse but mourned. "Why should they trust you again?" Jon could not meet her gaze. "They shouldn't," he said. "But if they do not, Winterfell will stand alone against powers beyond any house's banners. I offer no crown, only a chance to fight beside me." The dragon hissed, frost fanning from one nostril, embers from the other. Gasps rippled through the hall. Bran's pale eyes fixed on Jon. "Will you bind yourself to the land, body and soul? Will you bear the agony of holding ice and fire in one heart?" "Nembamsiwan." "I already bear it," Jon whispered. He felt the truth of it in the dragon's talons pricking his shoulder. Pain and solace at once. "Tell me what must be done." Bran's crownless brow furrowed, as though seeing visions even now. "The heart of winter stirs in the far north, where once the others were born. The fire sleeps restless beneath Dragonstone, where Valyria's doom still echoes. You must take each flame and each frost into yourself before they awaken uncontrolled. Only then can Westeros learn balance." "Nah." "To Dragonstone and beyond the wall?" Arya asked, stepping close enough for Jon to smell the oils that kept her blade rustless. Her eyes remained that of a she-wolf who had tasted too much death. "That is a road through nightmares." Jon opened his mouth but halted as the dragon lifted its head, wings snapping open. In that gesture, he felt agreement or command. "I'll need those who remember nightmares," he said at last. "And those who refuse them." Preparation devoured days. Ravens flew to every holdfast, summoning volunteers. Some lords balked, citing harvests, rebuilding, the risk of yet another war. But when the sky above Winterfell flickered at twilight, half a curtain of green fire, half of blue snowlight, even cynics felt their bones tremble. Northerners who had once knelt to Jon for his Stark blood alone now came for his alignment with both direwolf and dragon. Men who had sworn to Daenerys but survived her fall trudged from the south, bearing scars shaped like dragonflame and pledges to atone. Wildlings emerged from the haunted forest, drawn by rumors of a wolf king wielding frost and flame alike. Gendry arrived with Valyrian hammers, forged anew, gifted by King Bran for the journey. Davos Seaworth rode in with news that storms raged off Dragonstone's coast, unlike any in living memory, waters boiling one day and freezing the next. The realm itself seemed to convulse, impatient for the reckoning. Jon stood at the Godswood pond the night before departure, staring at the reflection that rippled between white trunk and black water. He barely recognized the man, hair shot with frost despite his youth, eyes ringed in shadows of sleepless visions. The dragon, named Nemerian, for its dual nature and Arya's insistence, coiled around his shoulders, already half his arm's length in body, wings spreading to cast mixed aurora upon the weirwood's face. Steps approached on hush-soft boots. Arya came to stand beside him, sword at her hip. "You never leave a journey without saying goodbye," she said almost accusingly. "I did before," he reminded her. "When I rode to the wall the first time. We said farewell after, and it hurt us both." "It still does." Her voice cracked like thin ice. Then she slipped her hand into his. "Ghost will guard you, but who guards your heart?" Jon squeezed her fingers. "I have no heart left to guard. I carry winter's bite and fire's burn. Nothing more." "Liar," Arya whispered, leaning up to kiss his cheek. "Carry this too, and remember you are loved." When she left, Nymerian crooned, pressing its icy snout to the warmth of Jon's neck. For once, no memories rose of the woman he loved and killed. Instead he felt the thump of hearts. Wolf, dragon, man, beating in improbable concord. The column set forth under banners of direwolf and dragon conjoined, half silver, half white. By the shivering sea they would split. Jon and a northern host toward the desolation beyond the frost fangs where the heart of winter pulsed. Melisandre, Davos, and Southern volunteers would sail to Dragonstone to contain the sleeping fire. Bran's ravens guided them, though he remained in Winterfell, tethered to the weirwoods to weave watchful magic. At Eastwatch by the sea, the wall's breach yawned like a mouth missing teeth. Jon's breath fogged in spirals as he halted beneath its broken arch. Recalling the night, the wall cracked under dragonflame. Now the air hummed not with collapse but with a resonance that vibrated through teeth and bone. Snow fell upward in lazy flakes, as though gravity itself reconsidered allegiances. Tormund Giantsbane emerged from a tent, beard rimed with frost, laughter booming. "Thought you'd slunk south to soft beds, Crow King," he roared, grasping Jon's arm. "Instead I find you chasing dead gods again." "Wouldn't miss it," Jon said, managing a thin smile. The wildling's booming mirth sobered when the dragon peeked from Jon's collar. "Bugger me," Tormund muttered. "It's true then. Ice and fire birthing in one belly." Jon only nodded. That night, a round fire sparked beneath auroras of shifting hue. Ghost patrolled, while Nemirians soared in concentric rings overhead, leaving contrails of crystals that tinkled like distant chimes when they shattered. Men watched in silence, some praying to the seven, some to unnamed spirits, some to none at all, but all understood that dawn would carry them into a realm no map could anchor. Before sleep, Jon opened the parchment Bran had sent with him. Though he already knew its contents, visions glimpsed by the three-eyed raven, a tower of hoarfrost girdled by storm clouds, at its pinnacle, a crystalline heart beating in sync with a molten one half a world away. Shadows of dragons battling winds of razor snow. A figure poised between, cloaked in living twilight. Bran's note ended with a final line, a benediction, or a warning. "Whatever breaks will make you whole." Jon folded the note. In his hand it felt lighter than the duty pressed upon him, yet it steadied him. He lay upon furs with Ghost curled against his back, and Nymerian upon his chest, its dual breath washing his face in alternating warmth and chill. Sleep claimed him with the ease of frost, creeping over still water, and he dreamed not of blood or loss, but of a sun and moon sharing the sky, locked in eclipse, painting the world in hues unseen. In the hush between beats of that strange day and stranger night, he heard the land whisper, "Avatar of fire and ice, remember who you are." Night advanced like a slow-turning tide, quieting the camp at Eastwatch, until only the groan of shifting ice and the soft clatter of armor echoed beneath broken ramparts. Jon woke before dawn, roused by a restlessness that thrummed in the earth itself. Nemirian had grown again overnight. Where the hatchling had once coiled about his shoulders, its neck now arched past his ear, wings mantling to span nearly a yard. One membranous limb brushed the tent's canvas and left crystals blossoming where it touched. Ghost lay crouched at the entrance, ears canted forward, white pelt silvered by starlight. For a moment, Jon simply breathed, feeling the disparate pulses knotting inside him. Wolf, dragon, man, something older still, and wondered if human ribs were ever meant to cage such things. At the first chalk smear of daylight he stepped outside. Cold bit raw at every seam of his cloak, yet a faint heat rose from Nemirian's chest against his back. Across the churned snow of the camp, figures stirred. Tormund's wildlings rolling furs, Sergine Mormont checking the leather lacings on her bare-sigilled brigandine, Northmen muttering over steaming bowls as they watched the skies bruise fluorescence. No sun breached the horizon. Instead, an arc of green and blue shimmered northward, rippling like a banner cut by invisible spears. Jon crossed to the makeshift smithy, where Gendry labored over a line of half-moons set in iron hafts. The Baratheon bastard looked up, sweat frosting at his temples, and offered a grin half lost in vapor. "Dragonglass axes," he explained, running a thumb along an obsidian edge so dark it swallowed the dawn. "The children taught me a bind of resin and ash, won't shatter when it meets the cold." His smile dimmed as he straightened. "Every blade I forge feels like a prayer we might not live to finish, but it's the best prayer I know." Jon clasped his arm. "It's more than prayer, Gendry. Steel and stone hold when faith breaks." From the yard Tormund bellowed, calling the war council together. Jon joined them beside a charred oak table scarred by 1,000 small fires. A map weighted by daggers displayed the land beyond the wall. The frost fangs clawing southwest, the milk water curving like a frozen serpent toward the dusky valley known as the White Waste, and further blank parchment where no ranger's quill had returned to fill the void. Bran's raven perched near the edge, feathers iridescent in the polar aurora, one black eye gleaming with unsettling intelligence. Melisandre stood almost inside the map's shadow, her ruby pulsing faintly. "Our course is decided," she said, voice cutting through the morning hush. "We march to the Valley of the Night Rivers, where the heart of winter stirs beneath a spire of world ice. Every league north will thin the veil between life and death. Keep torches lit, for flame anchors your souls." "Flame's no good when the wind steals breath from your lungs," grumbled Big Baroque, shouldering a war-pick bound with direwolf fur. "I trust steel and furs, not fire talk." "You'll need both," Jon murmured. He set a gauntleted finger upon the empty waste. "The children said the heart beats here. We strike fast. Break the ice crown before it fully wakes." "Nam? El-1-na." "And what then?" asked Erjain, braids clinking with tiny carved bones. "If we destroy this heart." "Not destroy," Melisandre corrected. "Claim, bind to him." Her slender hand extended toward Jon as though shaping revelation from frost. "The cold god will not fall to ash. Its power must reside in living blood, or it will roam unchained." Murmurs shivered through the council. Fear, wonder, distrust. Tormund's lip curled, but he said nothing. Ghost growled low, and Nemirian hissed, steam and rime mingling midair. Jon silenced them with a glance. "We march at noon," he declared. "Light iron braziers on every sledge. Bring dragonglass, flint, torches soaked in lamp oil. No one wanders alone." They broke. Orders rippled outward. Men and women lashed gear. Oxen snorted clouds. Jon found a quiet stretch of shore where broken slabs of sea ice sheared together. He knelt, watching waves heave beneath their wintry skin, and let the ocean's rough cadence steady him. In the hiss of brine pushing through cracks, he thought he heard a far-off roar, like wind in distant caverns, yet more deliberate, more alive. "I used to fear that sound." Davos Seaworth clumped up beside him, one mittened hand resting on the hilt of a short sword. "Before Blackwater I couldn't look at the sea without picturing green fire-eating ships like kindling." Jon rose. "Do you fear it now?" "Aye. And I know better than most that fear's a good companion." Davos' smile was rueful. "It keeps a man humble, reminds him he's no god." Jon's gaze shifted south where storm clouds massed over the horizon, perhaps already menacing the fleet sailing toward Dragonstone. "Be humble for me in the south, Davos. I'll need someone stubborn enough to argue with a mountain of flame." "Then you chose the right smuggler." Davos nodded to Ghost. "Look after him. He's got too many souls in that skin to be careless." As they clasped forearms, Nymerian chirred, its different eyes narrowing as though memorizing Davos' scent. The old knight managed a laugh. "Tell your dragon I prefer my fish salted, not charred." Jon watched Davos depart for the docks where black-hulled cogs unfurled patched sails. When he turned, he found Arya leaning against a tumble of ice-streaked crates. She wore a heavy wolfskin cloak, but the grace of her posture spoke of hidden daggers. "You'll be late," she said, chin flicking toward the rally yard. "You should be aboard the southern ships," he countered. "Your speed belongs in narrow corridors, not endless blizzards." "I go where I'm needed." Arya straightened. "Right now I'm needed north. Someone has to watch your back that isn't distracted by prophecies and ruby necklaces." He opened his mouth to argue, but the stubborn tilt of her jaw echoed every memory of the sister who never heeded walls or rules. Jon sighed. "Then stay near me," he said. "If the ice breaks beneath us, I'd rather drown knowing a stark shadow rode at my side." She smiled, fierce, bright, fleeting. "Try not to drown. I'd hate to rescue you again." By midday, gray light thickened into lead clouds. The column wound out through the wall's breach, dozens abreast at first. Wildling raiders beside Northmen foot. Armored knights astride shaggy garrons stomping against frostbite. Sledges piled with braziers trailing sparks into the swirl. Ghost loped along the vanguard, Nemerian gliding overhead. The road dissolved into drifts. They followed crags and wind-carved cairns rising like petrified sentries. Snow swallowed sound. Only the groan of pack ropes and the hiss of sled runners broke the hush. As they climbed the Frostfang foothills, day bled into a twilight that lingered, refusing full dark. Colors bled too, until the world seemed etched in slate and bone. The sky's aurora brightened, casting dancing silhouettes. Tormund called it a witch-light road, means the great powers are walking, he said, booming laughter swallowed by peaks. The third camp lay in a shallow vale, where ice-rimed firs bent like old men in prayer. Fires sprouted, sap popping in quick red petals. Jon walked per meter with Jane Mormont, speaking softly of supply counts. When she retired, he lingered, troubled by the creak of trees and a subtle vibration beneath his boots, like the slow thump of a distant drum. Nemerian perched on a branch above him, wings folding tight, reptilian head cocking as though listening to a voice only dragons understood. Snow sifted from needles, gathering in luminous crescent on Jon's pauldron. A whisper tickled the edge of hearing. He pivoted, hand to Longclaw, but it was not blade met his eye, only a flicker of pale shapes between trunks. Children of the forest. 3 emerged, small as toddlers yet lithe, skin dappled bark, hair of lichen. One stepped forward, carrying a crystal phial swirling with starlight. She spoke the common tongue haltingly. The world's marrow thins, the heart beats loud. Drink. She offered the phial. Jon took it. Within churned a silvery liquid that cast no reflection. What is it? Moon milk distilled from the pool beneath the weirwood of the shivering shore. It tempers flame. You will need it when you touch the heart, or the cold will slice your spirit in halves. She craned to examine Nemerian, pupils like embers in pitch. And the worm will need none, already moon and sun in one stone. Nemerian crooned agreement, fanning frost across the branch. Jon bowed. Your people risk much guiding us. Balance keeps us alive as well, she answered, then turned, melding back into gloom. Snow closed behind like a curtain. Jon uncorked the phial. Its scent was not scent at all, more like the absence of air, the hush between waves. He stoppered it, tucking it into a leather pouch near his breast. He felt its faint coolness seep inward, soothing some raw edge he hadn't known bled. Back at Fireline, Melisandre awaited. The ruby's heartbeat mirrored Nymerian's glow. They counsel you? She asked. He nodded. They gave me this. He didn't draw it out. I see their shadows. Her eyes were dark pools reflecting flame. Remember, even the children once summoned wildfires that scorched half a continent to halt the first men. Balance exacts a price. Menda. Jon studied her, recalling stories Stannis men whispered of Azor Ahai's blade tempered in his wife's breast. If price is blood, I'll pay mine, but I won't burn another innocent. Something like sorrow flickered across her face. May your vow prove stronger than prophecy. She withdrew, red cloak whipping smoke into sparks. That night, the first whites came. Jon woke to shouts, steel ringing. He burst from his tent, long claw in hand, just in time to see ice-blue glow swarm between trees. Corpses desiccated, blackened, shambled at unnatural speed, eyes cold lanterns. Torches swung. Dragonglass arrowheads hissed through the dark. But for every corpse fell 2 more staggered out. Jon sprinted toward the gap, Nemerian screeching overhead, belly lighting with molten veins. At his command, in truth, at their shared pulse, the dragon loosed a torrent of bright blue-white flame, fringed in red. Where it struck, whites exploded in showers of frozen shards and steaming ichor. The fire left behind a carpet of glassy frost. Tormund barreled beside Jon, war-pick crunching skulls. Always a bloody party with you, he roared. Where are the big blue lads? I'd fancy knocking antlers with another again. No others yet, Jon panted. He cleaved a corpse clean to collar, black blood sizzling on Valyrian steel. They test us. Then we test 'em back. Tormund's laugh cracked, half ferocity, half thrill. The skirmish ebbed after 100 dead. Not one living fighter fell, though several nursed frostburn where spectral ice grazed skin. As dawn bruised the east, they piled corpses into a pit, doused them with oil, and set them ablaze. Jon watched black smoke smear the sky, the smell of burnt flesh mixing sickly with pine. Nymereans circled above the plume, until even the embers froze to thorns of ash. 2 days, 3, then 4 through terrain increasingly unreal. Valleys filled with blue mist that flashed malicious shapes at the corners of one's eyes. Rocks exuded heat, while rivers crusted over mid-current. Nights shimmered, days drowned in penumbral gloom. Men tethered themselves by rope, lest they wander after phantom campfires. Yet the company pressed on, plowing switchback trails up the Frostfang's spine. Late on the 12th march, they crested a ridge and beheld a basin vast as a small sea, its floor smooth glass that reflected sky and company alike in eerie clarity. At its center pierced a tower of ice rising half again the wall's height, spiraled like a serpent locking tail and jaw. Lightning crackled within fissures, illuminating an inner core, rippling, pulsing, alive. The heart of winter. Melisandre's voice shivered. Even she seemed dwarfed, her ruby dimmed. Jon's own heart thudded painfully. The children's file weighed against his chest like a stone. Ghost snarled. Hackle's ridge stiff. Nymerean's wings beat in slow arcs, one casting embers, the other snowflakes. Behind, the army murmured like surf on gravel, caught between awe and terror. "We go now," Jon said. "Skirmish lines hold the rim. Axemen break any corpses rising from beneath that mirror ice. Arya, Tormund, Jane, guard our rear." He motioned to Melisandre and 2 children scouts who had appeared without sound. "Keep torches lit till we signal." He stepped onto the glass-smooth lake. It did not crack. Instead, a faint chord hummed beneath his boot. Each footfall answered with a resonance, as if he walked upon an enormous crystal bell. The tower loomed, facets reflecting Nymerean's contrapuntal glow. At 30 paces the air pricked with a cold, so deep flame burned blue upon torches. Smoke froze mid-curl. Nymerean hovered over Jon, aura shielding him with mingled heat. Still breath froze in his beard. The tower's base broadened to a dais carved by no mortal chisel. Jon ascended translucent steps that pulsed with inner starlight, every beat sensing to his pulse. At the summit, a hollow waited, barely man-sized. Within, the core of the spire throbbed, a nucleus of darkness fringed in blinding pale light, cycle after cycle, as though a cosmic lung inhaled all warmth and exhaled deeper cold. He withdrew the file. Moon milk swirled. Melisandre held her torch aloft behind him, but offered no words. This crossing was his alone. Jon uncorked the flask, tipped it, and drank. The liquid was colder than death, hotter than a forge, both at once. Every nerve screamed, then stilled. He stepped into the hollow. Immediately, ice sealed at his back, cutting him from the world. Within, light and shadow flayed him. He was in no chamber. He occupied a single moment stretched into eternity, faced by visions layered atop one another so intricately they became a living tapestry. He saw himself as a boy chasing Bran's kite, as Lord Commander on the wall, as the man plunging a dagger through Daenerys' heart, as father to no child, brother to all the dead, as king crowned by snow, and as monster wreathed in flame. Each identity peeled away in flakes of color until nothing remained but the raw element, breath condensing to frost, blood combusting to embers. A voice not unlike the wind yet thicker than stone filled the void. "Who are you that seeks me?" He answered not with words but with memory. Ygritte's laugh in the steam of a hot spring. Robb's grin beneath the first snow of their youth. Sam's trembling resolve as he stabbed a White Walker. Arya's kiss on his cheek. Threads of warmth stitched through frost. "Fire cannot melt me," the voice cautioned. "Ice cannot contain me." Jon summoned images of ice turned to weapons. The wall that shielded realms of men, the snowbank that had cushioned Bran's fall, the crisp hush before first flakes taught him wonder. Images of fire that warmed, not destroyed. Winterfell's hearth, the forge where Gendry shaped obsidian, the torches lighting wildlings' freedom from fear. Together, he thought, we survive. The heart pulsed. Jon felt his soul drawn toward that beat. He stretched a hand. Skin cracked. Bone glimmered. But still he reached. When his fingers met the core, agony overwhelmed sense. Screams of every man white ever killed, roar of glaciers calving, the desolation of 1,000 winters piled atop. For a breath he was certain his body lay shattered into stardust. Then something warmer threaded the void. A river of ember drawn from the Mirian outside, from ghosts' wild loyalty, from the humans singing war songs at the basin's rim. Those strands braided through him, knitting marrow, wrapping the cold within a weave of something fierce and gentle. Remember who you are. The echo was Bran's. Jon closed his hand around the heart. It shrank, condensing into a fist-sized shard, clear, faceted, rushing with light like captured aurora. Pain subsided, replaced by an ache of immensity squeezed into human flesh. Ice lay in his palm, yet steam curled from it, and a trickle of water ran across knuckles before freezing again. The spire cracked like thunder. A fissure raced skyward, splitting the tower. Jon leapt through the opening ice, landing upon the dais as the top half of the spire sheared off, shattering into a blizzard of diamond dust. Outside, the army cried out. Jon steadied, heart hammering against ribs with each new surge of frozen power inside him. Melisandre stared at the shard clutched in his hand, eyes glistening like tears freezing midfall. You bear winter's crown, she whispered. Nemirian alighted upon his shoulder. One wing beat sparks, the other glittered frost. The dragon's mismatched eyes met Jon's, and, in their reflection, he glimpsed himself. Gaze flickering between ember and glacier, skin faintly luminous, hair drifting in a phantom breeze no one else could feel. Balance, precarious but real. The basin ice rumbled. Cracks spidered out from the spire's remains. From beneath, shapes writhed. Scores of whites trapped in the lake, clawing upward, now that prison thawed to chaos. Form ranks. Arya's voice rang, steel rasp already singing. Jon raised the heart shard, and cold surged. Frost rippled across broken ice, sealing fissures before corpses could emerge. Those already free staggered, limbs encased in sudden rime, and Nemirian swept low, exhaling fire that ignited frozen bodies in blue-white conflagrations, until screams twisted into snow. Torment cheered, hefting his pick. Ha! Shown the bite of summer snow, Crow King. Ah! Yet, even as corpses burned, the distant sky cracked with crimson lightning. To the south, above the horizon, a column of fire flared. Dragonstone? Jon felt the echo as if through a cord stretched between his heart and some seething furnace leagues away. The other half of the world's wound had torn open. Davos ships had reached the volcanic isle, but something had awakened beneath the mountain. Flame rose high enough for even the far north to glimpse. A wave of heat kissed Jon's new winter-crowned soul. He staggered, balance tipping. Melisandre steadied him. Ice now resides within. You must meet its opposite. Jon nodded. Swallowing dread thick as grease. We march south. You will melt before summer fields, warned the child scout, emerging from drifting shards. Then flame will freeze beside me, Jon answered. He turned to the gathered host, faces chapped, armor frosted, eyes ablaze with disbelief and nascent faith. Break camp, he commanded, voice carrying farther than mortal throat could manage, echoing among peaks. We ride for the wall again. Winter marches with us, but we shall carry it where it must go. Then so. Arya's blade tapped her scabbard in salute. Tormund roared something about roasting giant hearts. The men and women whose fear had crystallized into quiet courage moved at once, sledges wheeling. Above them, Nemirian beat wings, each stroke blending snow and spark, into swirling helix trailing Jon's shadow. As they descended the ridge, Jon glanced back at the shattered tower. Twilight already leached into night, but shards of the heart lay strewn across the lake like stars fallen to earth. A thought sparked, not his alone. That one day, when fires cooled and ice thawed, grass might grow where terror had once ruled. Balance was no crown. It was a promise, fragile and living like breath. He closed fingers around the shard he carried. Frost traced veins beneath his skin, their glow faint but constant. Southward waited molten doom, and every mile would test the fusion now burning inside him. Yet for the first time since Ghost had led him to the grove, Jon felt something like certainty take root. Ice and fire were not enemies but twin songs yearning for harmony. He would be their chorus. And in the long hush of that polar night, the land listened. The column wound from the frost fangs like a silver serpent, torches bobbing in the dusk, while pack beasts steamed and shuddered under mixed cargoes of dragon glass, tinder and barrels of pitch that now froze to brittle stones each night. Jon rode at the fore on a rangy gray courser, Ghost padding silent at his stirrup, Nemerian coiled across his shoulders. The dragon had doubled again in span. Its feather-edged wings could vault it skyward for short glides, and its mixed breath left shimmering contrails that crystallized, then hissed away in sparks. Men marched behind wrapped in furs that crackled with frost, the instant they left the dragon's residual warmth. Shield straps squealed where rime glued leather to metal. Yet no one complained. They had seen the heart of winter fracture beneath Jon's hand. They had tasted the hush that poured from its depths, a hush so absolute it had seemed to stop even memory. After such revelations, the grind of leagues felt small, and if dread lingered, purpose tempered it into something close to zeal. On the fifth night, the aurora vanished. Clouds rolled south, low and lurid, flashing umber at their bellies as though storm clouds brooded over a furnace. Warmth seeped north on a breath so heavy with sulfur and salt, it clawed at throats long resigned to Arctic sting. Ropes of fog trailed those moving clouds. When they brushed treetops, the needles withered to black husks before the company's eyes. Melisandre studied the horizon, ruby thumping like a fever. "The mountain exhales," she whispered, and Jon felt the shard in his vest tighten with cold, as though eager to fling chill at the encroaching fire. By dawn they reached the wall's breach, its shattered ice now stained with soot blown on the rising southern wind. Gendry's forge crew had dismantled the smithy and packed crucibles on sledges. Devos ships, Jon learned, had returned to Eastwatch to deliver warnings. 3 galleys lost to rogue waves that boiled and froze in the same breath, rigging snapped by cinder sleet. Only Davos' own Black Betha remained seaworthy, anchored in water that steamed, and then crusted with frost in cycles of maddening speed. "Like the gods gone drunk," he said, greeting Jon with brittle humor. "The sea can't decide if it wishes to cook us or keep us on ice for leaner times." Jon wasted no hour. He ordered half the host south on foot toward Queenscrown, and the King's Road beyond. The rest to embark with Davos along coastlines still navigable. "Ice travels swift by ship," he argued when Jane Mormont protested. "The heart has settled in me, but I must carry it to Dragonstone before its cold turns to blight. Steel your Northmen for wind and rain. I'll meet you at the Trident if your feet outpace my sails." They left that evening under lowering skies. Storms herded them down the coast, columns of lightning chasing surf that hissed where molten veins laced each crest. From Black Betha's stern castle, Jon watched trees ignite in silent blossom, a league inland when tongues of ruby fire licked from clouds. Yet 100 yards closer to shore, icebergs ground together, shrieking like tortured whales, birthing new shelves of jagged white every hour. Balance frayed by degrees. Nemerian took to the rigging, wings mantling atop the mainmast, half buried in the cloud of gulls that followed. Its presence steadied the sailors. When fiery sleet rattled the deck, the dragon inhaled and breathed a plume of frost that sheathed planks without stealing their traction. When black hail hammered canvas, its opposite breath sent spirals of cinder gusts that melted the shards mid-flight. The crew began calling it Two-Song, whispering thanks each time its duet breaths saved line or limb. 5 days south of the gift, The fleet met winter running north. Snow drove before an onshore gale, yet the flakes melted to steam as they hit deckboards. Steam filled sails fit to burst. Davos reefed canvas until only storm cloth remained, but Betha still flew half again her normal pace, prow shearing waves that hissed and froze and shattered astern. Night offered no rest. Lightning crawled the masts like fiery serpents. Ropes smoldered, then glazed with hoarfrost. Sailors' breaths came in plumes of red and white that twisted together and vanished. Men lashed themselves to railings, singing sea shanties broken by prayer. Jon stood with cloak flapping, palm around the shard, feeling its chill build until his skin numbed, then its edges thaw as distant Dragonstone's roar surged. He sensed the land before he saw it, a tremor in marrow, a longing like iron called to lodestone. The pull. A fire. Dragonstone rose from smoke at dawn of the seventh day. No brooding silhouette now, but a living volcano wearing a crown of flame that licked clouds blood orange. The air tasted of copper and pitch. Columns of fire spiraled from fissures halfway down the mountain, feeding a curtain of sparks that drifted over Blackwater Bay like malignant snow. Stone faces along the fortress walls wept magma that cooled mid-fall to spires of black glass. The ancient castle seemed alive, a dragon awakening from stone after millennia of sleep, its breath poisoning sky and sea. Black Betha's crew balked, but Davos steered for the western lee, where currents still held cold enough to check the worst of the heat. Skiffs rode Jon, Melisandre, Arya, Tormund, Gendry, and a pair of children to the ash-coated beach. Sand scorched boots through soles. Moments later, frost scurried across the grains until they cracked like glass. The tension between elements made every step a test of nerve. Nemirian swept overhead, venting twin plumes that carved tunnels through smoke. The mountain answered with a belch of flame so immense it painted the dawn crimson. At the old causeway, red priests awaited. 6 in scarlet, their eyes hollow with awe. Thoros of Myr had died years ago at Winterfell, yet his brethren bowed as if the same legends clung about them. Their leader, a gaunt woman named Palmyra, greeted Melisandre with a clasp of forearms. "The Lord's heart breaks the mountain," she said. "The flame that must consume seeks a vessel." "And it will have one," Melisandre replied, nodding to Jon. His presence drew priestly gazes that weighed and measured like brands. Palmyra's breath caught when the shard in his hand flashed frost. "Ice," she whispered, "carved to a king's jewel." "Not a king," Jon muttered. "Envel Torti." He strode past, up steps hot, then suddenly rhymed under his boots. The entrance hall to Fairhearth was transformed into a cathedral of magma and ice. Obsidian icicles dangled from arches, dripping fire. Atop the high dais pooled a spring of molten rock that did not spill, as though held in some unseen chalice. At its center floated a sphere of flame no bigger than a skull, yet its light stung eyes through lids. Jon felt its pulse across the chamber, a cadence synchronous with the shard's beat, yet offset, like a duet warring for tempo. Palmyra backed away. The Avatar must cradle the ember. Others have burned to cinder just by kneeling. Tormund snorted. Then he'd better not kneel. His bluff could not mask the white about his lips. Arya nudged Jon's elbow. Last chance to turn outlaw again. He almost smiled. And leave the realm to bake and freeze at once. Even a bastard knows better. He climbed the dais. Heat peeled moisture from skin in sheets, yet the shard nestled against his breast cooled him, or tried. At 3 paces the sphere spun faster, flaring until gouts of living fire spat outward, hissing to steam where they met frost, hissing outward from his boots. He drew a deep breath smelling of pine tar and winter mint, and thought of every hearth that had ever welcomed him. Winterfell's great hall, Craster's crude fire, the warm note of Ygritte's torch in an ice cave. Flame was a friend too when it chose. He opened his palm. The shard floated above it, glowing with sub-zero light. The air between shard and ember warped, as if gravity bent sideways. A column of mixed frost and spark whirled, linking them in a cyclone. Jon stepped into it. Pain sheared him as before. Fire chewing nerves, ice grinding marrow. but moon milk had toughened his soul's hide. He reached through agony, fingers closing on the ember that felt neither hot nor cold, but both at such extremity his senses overlapped into rainbow static. For an instant, he beheld himself from outside, a silhouette half-cloaked in rime, half-haloed in flame, standing where no mortal should stand. The castle trembled. Obsidian chandeliers fractured, raining dagger shards. Melisandre cried out a word in Valyrian. Palmyra and her priests echoed it. Wind unknown to shore or sky howled down the passageways until braziers guttered. The ember shrank, condensing like a damned sun until it fit Joan's grip. He slammed it against the shard. Flash. Sound left the world. Light left. Only heartbeat, doubling down into silence. When senses returned, he knelt on cooling rock. No molten springs remained, only a crust of basalt slick with dew. The sphere and shard had fused in his chest. He felt them there, twin cores rotating like cogs. His veins shimmered half silver, half crimson beneath grime. He drew breath and steam rolled out touched with snowflakes. Nemirian landed upon the dais, now large as a destrier, eyes blazing gold and sapphire. It bowed its horned head. For a heartbeat Jon swore he heard words inside the drake's cry. Whole. Outside the fortress the volcano quieted, though its slopes still shone red where old channels bled. Ash drifted but lacked heat. Soon frost glazed it. Balance had not been restored, merely captured. Two storms yoked in one breast. Jon rose, unsteady. Melisandre stepped close. Ice is no longer starved, fire no longer ravenous. You are the hinge. And hinges may rust, Arya muttered. But her relief glimmered like tears unshed. They descended as midday filtered through thinning ash. Davos met them at the beach, jaw slack at the sight of the mountain subdued. Fisherfolk already rode into calmer surf, nets dragging lumps of obsidian newly birthed. Life rushed back as though drawn by vacuum's end. Yet the realm's wounds ran wider than Dragonstone. Reports awaited. Storms on the Rose Road where hail and wildfire danced. Rivers near River Run dammed overnight by ice. Then flash flooded. Plague in Old Town. Fevers that chilled then burned victims to death within hours. Balance within one man could not mend every tear. Jon convened a council under the shadow of the stone drum. Raven cages clattered with fresh scrolls. Lords assembled by ship and road, among them Bronze Jon Royce, Lady Barbary Dustin, and Ryam Redwine bearing Old Town's pleas. From Winterfell, Sansa's letter urged caution. Southern houses saw in him a new conqueror, brandishing forces beyond reason, and threatened revolt if he claimed royal authority. Bran's Raven spoke plainer. Whatever fuses in you must fuse in the land. Convergence points, north and south, east and west. Threads await weaving. What does a raven know of weaving, groused Big Borok. But Gendry bent over a map with Melisandre and three maesters, marking places where elemental convulsions spike. The God's Eye, the Trident's Fork, the Hill of Rhaenys in ruined King's Landing, the haunted ruins of Valyria itself shimmering across the narrow sea. The wrong strings plucked at once, Gendry said, tapping ink dots, and the whole harp cracks. Jon listened, the twin cores spinning in sync with every tremor he sensed miles away, as if the land now thrummed through his bones. He feared it would tear him apart before mending itself. Yet in that fear glinted clarity. He was gate, not king. The forces must move through him, not exalt him. He spoke this aloud. Some priests nodded, some lords frowned. Arya simply said, "Then open the gate wider." They hashed a plan by candlestorm. Splinter forces would carry fragments of Jon's cold fire to 4 convergences, each led by one attuned to either element. Nemirian would travel with Jon to the God's Eye, where rumor claimed an isle of weirwood still bled sap that burned and froze on contact. Melisandre would bear a vial of his mingled blood to King's Landing, where wildfire still pooled beneath the dragon pit, her task to seed a pyre of rebirth over ruins. Palmyra and the Red Priests sailed for Old Town, temple archives hinting at crypt tunnels where black candles sputtered cold flame remnants of forgotten sorcerers. The flame half of a node, waiting closure. The children sent scouts to River Run where icy floods raged. There a dragonglass crystal grown from the heart's shards could anchor water to seasons again. Each mission perilous, each dependent on the Avatar surviving to connect final threads. "We may rip the thing we seek to darn," warned Maester Ennis, quill trembling. "Great forces seldom stoop to gentle seams." "Then we don't stoop," Arya answered. "We leap." Gendry hammered sigils into dragonglass medallions. 4 for the teams, 1 to remain with Jon. Each bore a wolf's head split by a dragon's wing. They felt warm on one side, cold the other. When he clasped Jon's palm, he whispered, "These will crack if either force goes wild. If one breaks, run. Done." Run where, when the world cracks? Jon returned, but the blacksmith offered a grim smile. The parties departed with the tide. Jon rode west across crownlands, scorched then frosted. Fields where wheat stalks still smoked, their tips kissed white by hoar. Small folk fled at his approach, some kneeling in prayer, others pelting stones until Nymeria roar scattered them. He left coin and food where he could, but fear had deep roots. He pressed north, circumventing King's Landing to grant Melisandre room for her rights. From a ridge he saw the city's skeleton. Domes collapsed, the sept a cherry husk, yet green shoots pierced ash in alley cracks. Hope bled where horror once festered. At Maidenpool, a band of sellswords blocked the bridge, demanding tolls. Their captain mocked the frozen scarecrow and his pet lizard. He never finished his jape. Ghost leapt, jaws snapping, while Nymeria swept low, its breath on one side chilling blades to brittle shards, on the other igniting wooden shields. Those who survived fled without a backward glance. The realm would learn quickly whose wrath walked its roads. Beyond Duskendale, Jon's party, Arya, Tormund, 2 children, and a dozen guards, entered the Riverlands. Rain sluiced from hot sky, hissing where it struck patches of frost that refused to melt. Storm drains belched steam. Fishermen wailed. Their catches cooked alive in nets, then flash froze mid-flop. At every ford Jon felt the land's ache deepen. The twin forces wrestled across distance, tugging at the bond within him. One night he dreamed Bran's voice, threads fray, knot them on the isle. He woke to find both medallions, the one at his throat and Arya's, hairline cracked. Nymeria keened. Ghost stood bristled, staring east where a distant red slit opened the overcast. King's Landing's ritual had begun. Jon gripped the dragon's horn. Ride. They reached Harrenhal by noon. The castle remained ruin, yet pools between blackened towers steamed with heat, shapes of armored wights waiting. Tormund led the charge, icy axes cleaving charred bones. Jon rode through, ignoring the melee. The towers' melted iron faces seemed to gawp at him, and in their echoes he felt the ghost of dragonfire old and new. His passing sealed fissures behind. Steam cooled to rime, wights froze mid-swing. Battle left in their wake a mausoleum of frost-plated statues. East of the trident the path wove through poplars already yellowing though it was spring. The wind carried scent of wood smoke and ozone. When they glimpsed the God's Eye Lake it smoked like a cauldron. Water near shore churned with ice flows. Farther out, waves lapped molten rock that bobbed like coals adrift. In the center loomed the Isle of Faces, its weirwoods haloed by a storm that flickered between snow squall and fire whirl. Lightning of alternating blue and crimson stabbed the canopy. The isle's ancient spell wards still held. Boats burned or froze before landing, but pathways of mist unrolled atop the water, switching substance with each breath, bridging gaps for a moment before collapsing. Jon dismounted. "Only we cross," he told Arya and Ghost. "Your medallion already strains. If I fail, you must cut the north loose, guard Winterfell." Arya's mouth thinned. "When you fail, who wins?" She pressed her forehead to his, then stepped back, eyes dry but bright. Ghost nuzzled his hand, refusing command. Wolf choosing faith. Jon allowed the direwolf to follow. He walked the first mist bridge, Nymeria aloft. Each footfall shifted surface from water to cinder to ice. Cold and heat tore at him. a tug of war inside flesh. Mid-span he faltered. The lake hissed upward with scalding jets. Ghost howled. Nemirian stooped, its frost plume quenching steam long enough for Jon to move again. 3 bridges, 5, then shore. The weirwoods greeted him with faces both sorrowing and fierce. Leaves clung half green, half ember glowing crimson taut. Sap oozed thick as blood, but where droplets touched roots they crystallized into red ice shards. At the heart of grove stood a natural arch of intertwined trunks, and within its hollow radiated a light neither hot nor cold, but perfect white. Bran waited there, or something that wore his likeness woven of raven wings and snowmelt glimmer. His eyes were entire skies. "Brother," the apparition murmured, soundless. "I am root and branch. Touch the loom, weave the twain." Jon approached. The cores in him whirled, desperate for release. Pain fogged sight. Yet he kept one memory before mind's eye. The courtyard of Winterfell where he laughed with siblings beneath banners snapping. Warm day, cold wind, harmony not yet broken. He stepped through the arch. Light engulfed him. But there lay darkness too. Velvet cooling the sear. His scream shook the grove. Colors inverted. The isle erupted in geysers of steam and snow. On the shore, Arya watched a column of light ascend, twin spirals braiding, red-white, until they merged into gold. The storm evaporated. The lake stilled, mirror bright. When the column thinned to a thread, silence crashed. Jon emerged alone, hair white at the roots blending black at tips, eyes molten silver shot with blue halos. Veins no longer glimmered separately. Instead, faint gold traced like sunlight under skin. Ghost padded behind, his coat shot through with streaks of red fur along ridge. Nemirian landed. Wings now entirely gradient, frost to flame, body thrumming. Arya exhaled a breath she hadn't known she held. The medallion at her throat cooled to neutrality, crack fused smooth. Across half a realm similar healings would ripple. Old towns' fevers breaking into dreamless sleep. River runs floods subsiding to gentle thaw. Even King's Landing's wildfire pyre cooling to fertile ash. Balance, imperfect yet living. Jon stepped onto solid ground still steaming. He looked at Arya, sister, witness, and managed a tired smile. "Winter and summer may quarrel again," he said, voice resonant like wind across harp strings. "But I think spring just remembered its name." She laughed, a sound brittle with relief and wonder. "Then let's carry that memory home." They rode north to summon lords not to a crown but to covenant. No rule by sword or dragon, but stewardship of seasons, vigilance that one force never swallowed the other. Sansa arrived from Winterfell, cloak embroidered with white and red leaves entwined. She knelt not to Jon but to the idea carved in him, and rose swearing northern oaths to guard balance. Gendry hammered new coins bearing crossed branches, ash and weirwood, and dragon wings overlaying direwolf. Maesters bickered, septons prayed, wildlings laughed. But the land, for now, listened. There were aftershocks, blizzards flaring amid heat waves, rivers reversing flow for hours. But Nemirian's passes calm skies, ghosts' howls steadied trembling earth, and when Jon set palm to soil frost, spread only enough to water seeds, heat only enough to what? Children of the forest came openly again, teaching grove songs that cooled forest fires, or sparked life in frozen fields. Red priests tempered zeal, learning that flame could warm without consuming. From Bravos sailed McGee bearing candles of black glass that burned soft silver, gifts to the new harmony. Years would measure true success, and none deluded themselves into thinking old hatreds gone. Yet each feast of harvest thereafter, they raised cups to a man who bore 2 winters in one heart, and taught both to hum the same tune. In distant ages bards would falter when naming him. King who wasn't, Lord of Hearth and Hoarfrost, last bastard of Winterfell. Jon preferred no title, only the quiet of mornings when dew rhymed with faint ice glittered atop blossoms, warmed by first sun. Tiny tablets recording that ice and fire, braided, could bloom. And sometimes at dusk, when Nemirian wheeled high, halves of his wings catching opposite rays, so that one glowed copper, the other silvery blue. Jon would rest a hand on Ghost's ruff and feel the twin pulses beat as one beneath rib and fur and scales. Then he would breathe, and the air across Westeros would steadier, as though the land itself remembered the miracle of one long, gentle exhale. The first full turning of the seasons after Jon Snow's binding passed like a lesson whispered across the realm. Spring arrived hesitantly, as though shy of its own greening, each bud pushing from soil that glittered with a transient crust of frost, before dusk's warmth coaxed it into dew. Farmers spoke of miracle wheat, stalks that held the sweetness of summer grain, but carried a faint chill in every bead of nectar, so rot dared not touch them. In the north, lambs kicked at snowbanks that thawed from beneath, leaving pillowed tunnels of cool air under meadows green as legend. In the reach, vineyards ran with early sap, yet their leaves stayed thick against sun-scorch, as if an invisible hand kept root and sky in courteous distance. Maesters in the highest citadels charted wind and water and wrote panicked treatises titled on climes newly temperate, then burned their drafts and wrote calmer ones, admitting they knew only that the world had been startled into balance as a man might be startled from sleep, lucid for a moment, then blinking back confusion. Jon walked these fields sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by Nymerian and Ghost, listening for the smallest disharmony, a stone too hot, a cloud too cold. When he sensed an imbalance, he need only breathe, and his breath wove unseen threads through air and soil, tugging warmth here, easing chill there until equilibrium sighed back into place. Word of this power spread, but the tales broke between peasant tongues and lordly ears. Some said he carried the sun bound in one hand, the moon in the other. Some swore he had bargained his soul to both gods and demons. Those who saw him simply felt the air settle around him, the way a restless hound settles at its master's feet, relieved, if only for a while. But power, however tempered, is invitation. Not every dreaming mind welcomed peace. In the high passes of the Red Mountains, where dust devils danced along roads once ruled by traitors and spies, a new faith sprouted. Emberborn they called themselves, wearing ash-red veils. Their prophetess, a soiled knight from old Volantis named Belashra, preached that flame held in leash was heresy, that true life was found only in the purgation of holy fire. She gathered exiles and sellswords, embittered by cold nights in the Boneway, and promised them the warmth of conquest. Rumors reached King's Landing, now a city no longer consumed by monarchic game, but restless under council rule. A council led by Sansa Stark, Edric Storm, Asha Greyjoy, and Sir Brienne of Tarth, whose mailed fist over the capital drew both praise and quiet resentment. Against rising zealotry they drafted proclamations of tolerance, yet ink pooled slower than swords were forged. Beyond the seas, the free cities peered westward and saw opportunity and threat in equal measure. Tyroshi wizards argued that if one man could bottle storm and snow, then 10 warlocks might just as easily unpack them upon rival harbors. In Korth, the warlocks of the Pureborn sent glass bottles afloat upon the summer sea, each containing a sliver of shadow and a sliver of light. Sailors unlucky enough to snag them hauled up frost-bitten nets, dripping with embers that refused to die until doused with sand. Even the crumbling archons of Valyria stirred from the memory of molten thrones, asking whether old catastrophes could be mended if wielded by hands steadier than those of dragonlords past. Jon received these tidings from ravens that perched upon the battlements of Riverrun, where he had taken temporary residence, while traveling through the Riverlands to continue his quiet service. Riverrun suited the work. Water that ran too warm from subterranean heat could scald crops. Frost that clung too long could blacken fruit. Here he balanced river mist and meadow air like a smith quenching a blade. Yet every scroll carried tensions that raised hair on Ghost's Ridge. When Gendry arrived with a delicately carved ebony chest of fresh medallions, their surfaces now etched with runes derived from both Valyrian glyphs and the children's moon script, Jon knew the lull would not last. These medallions thrummed faintly in the presence of their creator, informing Gendry of distant tremors, even before ravens spoke. The blacksmith had fashioned them not as badges of office, but as shards of duty. They would track rupture, flash hot or cold, and break only when wielders forgot the humility balance demanded. That same evening Arya slipped into the solar, boots silent on rushes. Her hair was longer, bound in a half-tail like the braid of a Dothraki warrior she had once watched from a courtyard parapet. She carried news that made even Nymerian's mismatched eyes narrow. A sail brig anchored off Cape Wrath, she said, producing a parchment smelling of brine and tallow. The captain sought me because she knew I'd carry it to you without council fuss. Reports of ember witches moving north through Dornish passes, preaching fire over frost. They've taken 2 holdfasts that once bent knee to House Jourdain. Each stronghold burns for a day, then freezes over the next night, says here the ground spits angry soot, that turns to ice shards by dawn. Jon unrolled the map pinned beneath the parchment. Nymerian's wing poked over his shoulder, scattering candle shadows across the vellum. Balance fracturing again, he murmured, fingertips tracing a shaky line from Sunspear north to Storm's End. Someone is tugging fire free of its leash, then losing grip so cold whips back. We must mend it. Council will stall, Arya warned. They fear dissent more than imbalance these days. Jon folded the map. Then we go without them. They departed at dawn with a lean company. Jon, Arya, Ghost, Nymerian, Gendry, and a pair of children scouts named Pine and Sky, and Flicker of Dawn. Tormund remained behind to drill riverlords in the use of dragonglass if Emberborn zeal flared further north. Sansa protested, but Jon reminded her that each of them held a piece of the hearth. She tended political flame, he tended elemental. There was trust of old between siblings, though the letter of it strained with each new threat. She kissed his cheek as they parted, and for the first time he felt warmth travel from her lips into the pendant at his neck, living proof that his once icy sister had come to carry a spark of her own. The ride south carried them through the King's Road where trampled wildflowers recovered overnight beneath Jon's passing, frost edges on petals shimmering at dawn like dew. Small folk watched, awe mingling with caution. Some bowed, others crossed arms, reminding him that miracles unsettled as easily as they inspired. Every league closer to Dorne the heat pressed heavier, yet not so stifling as the sulfuric breezes from Dragonstone once were. This warmth had the taste of incipient wildfire, a promise of uncontrolled burn. Nymerian's flame breath puffed anxious curls. Its frost side remained subdued, conserving chill for the contest ahead. At Storm's End, they paused to confer with Lady Asha Greyjoy, who commanded the bay with a fleet of sleek black ships. The Iron Keepers, no longer raiders but guardians of coastal trade. Asha reported skirmishes between her patrols and Emberborn longboats disguised as fishing craft. Crew captured alive spoke of an island off the Stepstones where a half-drowned tower belched smoke by day and ice by night. Belashra's altar, they claimed, upon which she sought to call down the true phoenix. A conflagration cold and hot enough to fracture any man's soul, not tempered by pure fire. Jon felt the shard heart twist. A phoenix cannot be solely fire, he said. Else it would leave only ash, no rebirth. Belashra only knows flame, Asha answered. Ice to her is an enemy to be conquered. She thinks balance is weakness, a wall built between her and apotheosis. Damn? Asha offered galleys, but Jon chose the land route through the Prince's Pass, reasoning that his touch upon rock and root could dampen extremities before they rolled north along coastal winds. They rode hard, sun hammering from cloudless heights. At midday, on the 3rd day, they crossed into Dorne and found the first charred orchard. Orange trees stripped of fruit, trunks blackened but still standing, their branches encased in a glaucous shell of ice, thicker than a man's handspan. When Nymerian's frost breath kissed one trunk, the ice shattered, hissing steam. Inside the bark remained whole. Small green shoots peeked from scorched knots. Life hidden, waiting for permission. Jon closed his eyes and let his heart's twin cores hum. The bark flushed amber. Cracks opened along limbs, releasing sap that steamed then cooled to a crystalline glaze. One by one, leaves unfurled in a rustling whisper. From under the ice sheet, fire persisted, yet was now clothed by a gentler frost. Pine and sky trilled admiration. "The world remembers its first songs when you sing," the child said, amber eyes reflecting Nymeria glow. Arya paced perimeter, scanning dunes for movement. "I'd welcome fewer songs and more clues." Her voice held tension. There had been signs of ambushes these past leagues, drag marks across the road, footprints melted into glassy sand by intense heat. But no foes. When Gendry knelt to study a track, the sand still sizzled. "Hours old," he muttered. "They're driving captives somewhere." Jon's chest tightened. Captives meant leverage for Belashra's right. Human sacrifice fitted her creed. If she believed ice an abomination, what better spectacle than burning prisoners to upright pillars of flame, then freezing them mid-scream for her followers to admire? He spurred on, the company racing shadows that stretched ahead like taunting arms. At dusk they crested a ridge overlooking a dry arroyo speckled by ruined columns, remnants of a Rhoynar temple long swallowed by dunes. Fires burned at intervals where no wood existed, eerie white flame that hissed rather than crackled. Upon the largest plinth stood Belashra, veils swirling about armor, hammered in shapes of licking tongues. The Evening Star, some called her, for her helm bore a 7-pointed halo of steel that caught dusk light like embers in a brazier. Before the plinth kneeled 15 prisoners, heads bowed, arms bound. Emberborn acolytes ringed them, torches touching sand, so hot Jon could see it liquefy in ribbons before hardening. Belashra's voice carried, boosted perhaps by sorcery. "Fire is life unbound. Ice, the final shackle. Behold how we break all chains." She raised a blade seized from some summer night, steel heated to cherry red, and yet unwilling to droop, then plunged it into an amphora of oil that instantly roared skyward. White flames wrapped the amphora. The prisoners flinched. Frost rimed their cheeks as if the blaze exhaled winter, not heat. The contradiction unsettled Jon more than the cruelty. She has found a way to wrench the balance into separate currents, he realized, letting fire and ice radiate apart instead of smoothing each other. If that wedge grew, equilibrium across Westeros could unravel like a sail slit by wind. Arya knocked a dragonglass arrow, glancing to Jon for leave. He shook his head. Direct strike risked bloodshed that might power Belashra's right. Instead he stepped to the ridge's edge, lifted his hand, and let his voice ring flat across the night air. "Belashra of the Emberborn, you stand on sand older than any creed. Release those people and leave this land in peace." Belashra pivoted slowly. Her helm obscured her features, but the glow of 2 eyes, one red, one pale blue, shone within the visor slits. Maester's tales of certain Volantene sorcerers who stitched crystals into sockets surged in Jon's memory. She lifted her blade, steam coiling around the steel. "Ice Lord," she called, her accent thick with summer sea salt. "They told me you would come. Did you bring your leash?" Jon descended the slope. Nymeria soared overhead, its passing stripping heat and leaving swirling snow. Emberborn archers took aim, but Belashra flicked her hand. They lowered bows, curious to witness the duel. Ghost paced at Jon's side, hackles bristling. The children slipped into shadows. Arya held back, but tension radiated from her stillness. She was arrow knocked in flesh instead of wood. "My leash," Jon answered, voice calm, "is conscience. It compels me to guard life, not extinguish it." "And if life must burn to ascend?" Belashra asked. She gestured to prisoners. "These souls volunteered. They believe death in flame will free them from winter's cold." Sweat and frost mingled on the prisoners' brows. Sundark peasants and pale pilgrims alike, eyes glazed with fanatic exhaustion. Jon stepped closer until he felt the unnatural cold-hot wind swirl around him. "They are likewise bound by your spell. Release them, test their resolve in true freedom." She laughed, a rasp like tinder. "You bargain in half measures. Fire requires surrender." She thrust a torch into the amphora's opening. White plume roared. Frost instantly crept the amphoras outside, encasing the heat in a cage of translucent blue. Acolytes gasped in awe, kneeling. Belashra spread arms. "You see? I have bent cold to protect the heart of flame. I have no need of your compromise." Jon felt the shard within him spin dangerously, yanked by the imbalance. He breathed. Ice first, then fire, letting the two swirl around his heart until their motion steadied. "You trap them both," he said, "forcing frost and flame to serve your vanity. They will break free, and you with them." Belashra's eyes brightened. "Better to shatter than settle for chains. When I shatter, seed sparks will birth new suns." She raised her blade. Archers readied again. Arya's arrow released, hurtling for the torch in Belashra's hand, not her throat. The arrow's obsidian tip sliced the torch shaft. Flame dropped against sand turned glass. It sputtered, half extinguished. Chaos erupted. Gendry hurled a hammer weighted with dragon glass. It smashed an amphora, sending shards of frozen fire spraying. The children sang shrill notes. Saplings burst from sand, tangling Archer's legs. Nymeria dived, one wing unleashing frost that sheathed blades, the other spitting jets of fireless heat that boiled sand into waves. Belashra surged forward, ignoring the prisoners, who scrambled away as Ghost lunged to tear their bonds. She met Jon at the foot of the plinth, their swords clashing, his Valyrian steel singing smoke from contact with her magma-glowing blade. Every strike sent arcs of steam and sparks. She was swift, trained in Volantene pits. Jon countered with efficiency, born of wall skirmishes and wild breathing that absorbed heat, then vented chill to keep steel from softening. Belashra's blade struck his pauldron, metal hissing. But frost bloomed on impact, and the blade clanged free, its glow dimming. She hissed, retreating a step. "What are you?" "Consequence," Jon said, driving forward. His shoulder dip feinted, allowing him to slice a shallow cut along her vambrace. Instantly the wound flash froze, halting blood but stiffening her arm. She retaliated with a thrust that drilled flame into earth at his heels. But he pivoted, sweeping long claw up in a parry that shattered her sword to shards. Each shard burst into puffs of snow as they fell. A hush struck the combat field. Belashra stumbled, helm tilting back. Her eyes flickered, confusion-piercing mania. Jon could see the crystals embedded, one ruby, one sapphire, mirroring his own twin cores yet misaligned. She had tried to graft balance forcibly. "Help me," she whispered, almost childlike. Her hand splayed, revealing veins red as lava on top, blue as glacier beneath. The division cut her literally in half. Jon stepped close, lowering his sword. "Let go," he murmured, offering his palm. "You are not the elements. Let them flow through, not anchor in you. It will hurt." She reached, fingers trembling. For a moment their palms almost touched, and in that cusp, Jon felt her will. A furnace of grief. Childhood sold to a slave market, years rowing galley oars under whip, burning hatred of masters who embraced cold profit. Dream of fire liberation, stoked through pain. She had poured her agony into flame until it consumed her. She jerked her hand away. "I broke my chains." Now tears steamed on one cheek, froze on the other. "I won't wear yours." She snatched a fallen shard of her own blade, jammed it into the amphora's ice shell. Ice cracked. Flames leapt free. The amphora's contents, frozen naphtha, exploded skyward. Jon threw himself over her as blast threw them both. Nymeria veered, frost breath sheathing the plume, fire breath burning steam to harmless warmth. Arya screamed his name, then silence. Jon rolled, ears ringing, to see Belashra sprawled on glass sand, helm cracked. The crystals in her eyes darkened, veins dulling. She coughed, vapors curling half blue, half red. He knelt, pressing a hand over her heart. Frost and flame swirled from him into her, not as power, but as balm. Her breathing steadied. Color returned to veins, though the crystals remained dark, spent. She blinked, tears now simply water. "Chains?" Gone? She rasped. No chains, he said. Only choice. He lifted her helm away. She was younger than he'd thought, maybe 25. Face lean from hunger, beauty etched by resolve more than bone. She stared at the starry sky overhead, as if she'd never seen it unfiltered. Arya knelt beside a prisoner, an elderly man who clutched her hand through cut bonds. Acolytes stood stunned, weapons useless. The children's vines trust them. Gendry stoked smothered flames with powders of frost, scraped from Nymerian's wings until glass cooled. Finally Jon rose, helping Belashra to her knees. You will answer for harm done, he said, but also for harm unmade today. She nodded, gaze clouded. The zealotry drained from her like smoke escaping cracks. I thought purity was simple. Nothing living is simple, Jon answered. But life remains. He turned to the freed captives, speaking loud enough that those on ridge and valley heard. Fire warms, cold preserves. Together they safeguard harvest, hearth, and hope. Divided, they devour. He looked at Belashra's acolytes. Choose. Some dropped torches and walked away. Others knelt, accepting children vines turned to guiding ropes rather than bonds. Jon's heart fluttered at the weight he bore. Teacher now judge, still wary of slipping into tyrant. He felt Sansa's earlier misgivings echo. Rule by awe risked new despots. Only rule by shared duty healed. He declared that every follower who labored to restore orchards, rebuild holdfasts, and tend the wounded would be pardoned. Those who refused would face the justice of Dorne's princes. Nymerian roared assent. Frost petals drifted over flame-lit sand, settling like peace accords signed in snow. They spent 3 months in Dorne. Belashra, stripped of her title, donned coarse work cloth and labored beside farmers. Arya drifted among caravans, listening for sparks of fresh fanaticism, her quiet presence a whetstone for truth. Gendry forged plows tempered with minute flecks of dragonglass. They could cut parched soil without losing edge. Pine and sky sowed saplings bred from seeds cooled in winter water, yet warmed by desert sunlight, teaching Dornish children a chant that coaxed tiny buds to open shading leaves by midday. Jon rode between fields, coaxing dew where too dry breezes threatened, and cooling sunburnt earth, until seeds dared crack their shells. One dusk, on a ridge above an orchard beginning its second bloom, Belashra approached Jon with a sprig of newly ripened oranges cupped in her palms. Her eyes were clear. The crystals had melted back into flesh, leaving pale scars at her tear ducts that glimmered scarlet blue in certain light, reminders not of power taken, but of power surrendered. She bowed. I would sail east, she said, voice quiet. Teach beyond the narrow sea, that balance need not be captivity. Jon studied her. Ghost sniffed her hand and accepted a gentle scratch behind the ear, a gesture of trust earned. Jon nodded. Sail with my blessing, but remember, together is harder than apart. She smiled faintly. Harder, but kinder. With that, she crossed the valley toward Sunspear's winding shoreline where a Black Bethel longboat waited. Davos had offered passage that morning. On their final night in Dorne, Jon and Arya dined beneath wind shrubs that rustled half cool, half warm in marine breeze. Stars spilled like silver seeds across velvet. Arya toyed with a fruit knife, eyes following Nymerian's silhouette gliding against moons. Where to next? She asked. Where need arises, he replied. Perhaps the arbor, their vines rot from a heat wave unseasonable. Perhaps the Shadowlands. Rumors speak of frosts that petrify jade cliffs. And now, she eyed him. How long can one man wander plugging holes in the sky? Sooner or later folk must learn to mend rifts themselves. He sighed, nursing watered wine that tasted first crisp then warm. Gendry had invented a goblet that mixed chilled iron beads with warm silver filaments. I don't do it alone. You, Sansa Bran, the children, they are weavers. I'm thread. You're still mortal. She leaned back, blade balanced on fingertip. If your heart beats for both sun and snow, will it tire faster? He stared at his hands. They bore faint veins of gold that shimmered whenever his breath fogged. He had wondered too. I can't know. Then we plan for the day you're gone. Arya's voice held neither dread nor pity, only stark pragmatism. Teach others. Spread balance so wide that when you fall, the world hardly notices except to thank you in silence. He smiled, the curve of his lips wry. Leave it to you to talk of legacy before dessert. I watched too many legends die. She said, tossing the knife. It stuck in a post, humming. Better they die prepared. She rose, dusting sand from leggings. I'll ride north tomorrow. See Sansa, train a few new rangers. Maybe one will wield frost and flame through their own virtue, not sorcery. She touched his shoulder. You gave us time. We'll use it. When she slipped away, Ghost padded after, tail sweeping sand. Jon turned gaze skyward. Nemerian then descended, landing with faint tremor. The dragon's scales had darkened into muted dusk blue streaked by copper. The dividing line between wings now blended rather than abrupt. It crooned, lowered its head so Jon could rest his forehead between horns, feeling echo of heartbeats. Dragon, wolf, man, drumming slow harmony. In that stillness, he realized Arya's council had seated resolve. He would gather a fellowship of stewards, each attuned to some chord of nature. Not sorcerers seeking dominion, but guardians nurturing ebb and flow. Red priests who saw warmth as grace, not conquest. Maesters who studied frost as healer. Children whose songs infused seeds. Smiths like Gendry threading live metals. Perhaps one day, far distant, children at play would scold frost too eager or sun too sharp. And the land itself would listen, moderated by countless gentle voices, instead of one burdened heart. He inhaled desert night, cool on tongue, warm in lungs. Somewhere to the east, Balashra's ship creaked off a moonlit cove, sailed bellied by wind that smelt of citrus and salt. Somewhere to the north, Sansa penned letters, Bran whispered to Roots. Tormund taught knights how to laugh at ice whites and melt them in the same breath. The realm breathed along with him, not yet perfect, yet more alive than in living memory. Jon exhaled, letting the twin cores rest a moment. Sharpened silence spread across dunes until even distant jackals paused their howls. Not emptiness, poise. A brief perfect still point on a blade's arc. He let it pass, knowing dawn would call for labor anew. Balance wasn't a crown or a throne. It was a journey of countless small steps, each one asking everything of the traveler, offering nothing but the promise that life, in all its fragile contradictory glory, would continue one day more. And so, when first light brushed the horizon with lavender, Jon Snow, Ghost, and Nemerian set out again, footprints dissolving behind them, where desert frost kissed early heat, sign of a world learning, step by step, to walk its own path between the fires of destiny and the snows of fate. Wind carried the tang of salt and ferment as Jon Snow stepped off the yawl onto the docks of the arbor, boots striking planks sticky with crushed grapeskins. The late summer sun loomed heavy, burning through a skein of coastal mist, yet even under that glare, Jon tasted a wrongness on the air, heat like a fever, impatient and diseased. Vintners scurried across the pier with baskets of half-rotted fruit, flies clouding their shoulders, and their faces bore the taut panic of men watching livelihoods liquefy by the hour. One hurried past Jon and muttered a curt apology, only to jerk back when he noticed the wolf padding at the stranger's heel and the dragon gliding low overhead, wing beats ringing like iron bells. Ghost stalked ahead, sniffing barrels, tail stiff. Nemerian circled once, then banked westward toward the emerald slopes, terracing the island's core, steam trailing one wing, frost crystals dusting the other. Everywhere Jon looked, he saw similar contradictions. Mildew crawling over leaves while the soil beneath them cracked into dusty scales. Irrigation channels run warm as bathwater, yet pockets of bitter cold lurking in the shade where ripe clusters flashed with a glaze of ice. The imbalance was subtle here. No flames roaring sky high, no blizzards sculpting dunes, but the quiet rot felt worse, as though the land itself had grown febrile, delirious. He drew a measured breath, centering the twin cores in his chest. They spun in leisurely tandem, one cold enough to crack diamonds, one hot enough to slag iron, their harmonies holding. But on the arbor's wind that music wavered, as if a player struck the wrong key in an unseen room. It would not be mended by a single exhalation. They had come to teach, not merely to heal. Behind him clattered Gendry, shoulders straining under a keg filled with tools. Tiny crucibles, shard-embedded mallets, thin needles forged from silver and dragonglass. The blacksmith of balance, sailors called him. And even now the man found breath to whistle, though the tune faltered when the stink of rot thickened. Arya followed at a lope, loose shirt damp with sweat, eyes flicking left and right for hidden threats. Flicker of Dawn, the smaller of the two children who had joined them in Dorne, padded barefoot upon railings, gaze wide, drinking color and sound. Pine and Sky had remained behind to oversee new groves in the Boneway. They would rendezvous when vines here began to breathe true. At the head of the dock, an anxious cluster of local stewards awaited. Lady Aery Redwine, stern in homespun despite the pearls at her throat. Her steward Maester Alares Hightower, a young woman with sleeves so ink-stained they resembled abstract tides, and a red priest named Loras wearing robes to pink by sun and salt. Alaris' ink-dust fingers twisted a sheaf of weather charts as she bowed, half scholar, half exhausted vintner. "My lord," she began. "Jon," he reminded as they clasped forearms. "Titles weigh too much for this work." She managed a tired smile. "Then Jon, you're 2 weeks welcome. We've lost nearly a quarter of the White Star harvest. The fruit boils on the vine come noon, then crusts in frost after nightfall. We prune, we shade, we flood furrows. Nothing stays true." Loras inclined his head, torch scarlet braid swinging. "I burn prayers at dawn and dusk. Fire should chase rot, but instead heat hastens it. The Lord of Light answers in riddles. Or the land mishears," Jon murmured. He turned, surveying knolls quilted in vineyards. Above them Nemirian perched upon a watchtower roof-like, tail coiling lazily, mismatched eyes reflecting rows of sickly green. "Let's walk." They set off along a dawn road, where crushed skins stained dust purple-brown. All. At each row, Alaris pointed. Here the leaves wilted though roots swam. There the grapes shriveled, even while sap overflowed. Farther downslope fog poured, warm as soup by touch but lingering like winter ground mist. Gendry crouched to lift clumps of soil, sniffing for acidity. Arya vanished between trellises, reappearing beside irrigation gates. Knives tapping brass fixtures to mark soft spots. Jon knelt by a vine whose trunk oozed resinous tears. He pressed a palm to the bark. Inside the sap screamed hot, desperate. An inch beneath, Anlin froze, rock solid, choking circulation. Desperate and choked. Two truths locked in duel. He exhaled, letting a ribbon of cold slip from his core through fingertips, then threading warmth after it, like a weaver laying warp and weft. The trunk shivered. Resin slowed, hardened to amber. Leaves rustled. A sweet scent of green burst forth. He withdrew. The vine stood straighter, but one vine was not a vineyard. A vineyard was not an island. This valley too hummed out of tune with distant strings. Alaris watched breathless. "If you could pass that trick to the rest of us." "That's the point," Jon said. "We won't always be here." He rose. "Gather your stewards at first dark, near the old pressing pool. We'll show the method." That evening torches ringed a drained vat where vintners had once stomped harvests singing songs of sun. Now cracked clay caught sputtering pitchlight, and a hush kept by 24 laborers and maesters and servants. They looked upon Nemirian with equal parts reverence and dread, for the dragon crouched upon the vat's rim, wings half unfurled, each breath alternating frost plume and heat haze that wavered torch flames. Ghost lay beside Jon, fur bright under sooty splashes, of torch shadow. Jon opened palms. Balance begins with listening. He instructed them to kneel, to feel the earth through knees, to breathe through noses first cool, then warm. He taught them the slow pulse he had learned alone beyond the wall. Inhale the star cold, exhale the hearth flame. Let both swirl, yet keep neither trapped. Imagine two rivers meeting, he told. If you build a stone weir in one, the other floods. Carve a channel and let them braid. Some frowned, no comprehension. Others closed eyes, frowning deeper, sensing perhaps a tickle beneath skin. Horace lowered his hood. Sweat beading, then trickling chill. Arya, perched cross-legged on a barrel, echoed Jon's breathing, long practice during northern winters, as though she too rebalanced inner storms. Jon signaled. Gendry unveiled a shallow basin hammered from star iron and lined with translucent dragon glass. It sang when sunlight struck it, though now torch glow made faint auroras ripple its rim. Into it Gendry poured equal measures of boiling spring water and meltwater, chilled with ice shards from Nymerian's breath. Steam billowed yet lingered, neither hot nor cold, swirling luminous above the basin. Flicker of Dawn stepped forward, bare feet whispering on clay, and began to hum, notes pitched between flute and thunder. The steam column coalesced, twisting into a helix, glittering with motes of blue and red. Gasps circled. Jon reached, dipped fingers. No scald, no bite. Balance is not half heat, half cold, he said. It is heat honoring cold's place, cold honoring heat's shape. He let droplets rain upon a cluster of rotting grapes, Gendry set aside. The fruit trembled, rot beads sloughed away like gray tears, leaving plump globes glowing faintly. Alaris bit one, eyes widening at pure sweetness. Lessons continued until dawn. They taught the four breaths: north, south, hearth, sky. They taught the hissing chant that tuned water, the soft clap that tempered sun on leaf. By sunrise, a dozen learners could coax mildew from bark like ghost smoke. 3 could fog a sun-hot barrel until it cooled. Horace, hands ablaze in prayer, coaxed a vine's blossoms to relax and release seeds that had clung too anxiously to husks. Alaris traced rune curves on her weather charts and found new patterns where lows and highs might dance rather than clash. It was beginning. Yet as torches guttered, Jon staggered. Ghost whined. Nymerian's wings snapped. The twin cores inside him spun off rhythm, tugged by an undertow across leagues. Not the gentle disharmony of vineyards, but a scream in cold flame. He steadied on Gendry's arm. Arya's blade flashed ready. "What is it?" she asked. "Something west," he rasped, eyes focusing on a horizon blurred by exhaustion. Casterly Rock. They rode by dawn's second hour. The arbor's vines would now test balance under Alaris and Loras. Gendry remained to forge tools attuned to the new stewards. But Arya and Flicker of Dawn saddled swift mounts on the ferry galley. Ghost and Nymerian leapt from deck to deck until wind tasted of granite and iron. Casterly Rock rose within 2 days, anvil gray under brooding cloud. News preceded them. Rumor of a shard that fell from the sky onto the sunset sea, dragged ashore by Lannister miners. Sailors spoke of a black meteor cold as void, sweating hoarfrost by daylight. Yet when night came, fissures glowed molten red. Lord Tishara Lannister, widow of the Rock's last kin, had claimed the stone as tribute to house power, and planned to unveil it upon a new high gold festival in 2 nights turning. Already pilgrims thronged port markets, drawn by talk of a wish stone. Touch it, they said, and fortune rewrote itself in gold or blood. Jon felt fortune rewriting already, in tide lines crusting with gray ice under midday sun, in shop braziers whose embers hissed small snowflakes. The stone was a raw node, meteor born beyond realms where such duality meant life. Its arrival tugged the world, eager to rend harmony. Teshara greeted Jon in the Rock's throne hall, twin lion banners drooping above marble steps. She wore crimson mail and a circlet of beaten gold shaped like stalks of wheat. Behind her bristled guards dressed in tourney finery. Show steel, not battlefield rust. She dipped her head politely. "Wolf Lord," she said, "I hear you bring storms to heal." Jon's breath frosted between them. "Storms obey no lord, Lady Teshara. We appease or respect them. Tell me of this stone." Her hazel eyes narrowed. "Founder's gift. We lost half a crew retrieving it from surf. Yet it offers wonders. Torches burn brighter near it. Swords keep edge. Wounds freeze before they bleed out. My people cheer. We have much to rebuild after wars. Gold mines run shallow. Coffers thin. Then? Double-edged wonders," Arya remarked, stepping forward with her lean assassin's gait. "How long before torches burst, before wounds burn?" Teshara's smile thinned. "You counsel fear. You, who toppled queens and raised dragons." "Dragons answer balance," Jon said. "Your stone defies it. Its cold and heat wage war rather than dance. It will tear your home apart if you forge it into pride." A hush fanned the hall. Some guards tightened grips. Others glanced uneasily at walls trembling with faint knocks, as though something vast shifted beneath them. Teshara turned, motioning. 2 miners rolled a cart forward. Upon velvet cloth lay the meteor shard. A boulder larger than a war dog, darker than moonset. Veins of cherry-red pulse roved its surface, slow and hungry, beads of hoarfrost webbed between. Steam rose though torches here were quenched. Jon stepped nearer. Cores in his chest hummed. Ice wanted to caress this cosmic sibling. Fire wanted to devour it. He felt like a harp pulled by 2 hands. Nemirian snarled from the rafters, frost dripping from fangs. Teshara eyed the reaction with pride. "See, even your worm bows. With craft we could inlay blades." "No," Jon whispered. He laid a palm on the stone. Vision slammed. Endless void where stars birthed in fusion fury. Comets trailing ice so cold it burned thought. The shard's own journey through black decades until atmosphere ignited its skin, locked heat outside, cold inside. It hungered to rupture. Splinters of its essence radiated outward, pockets of micro-ends unborn. Jon recoiled. "You cannot hold this," he told Teshara. "It must return to sky or sleep deep where magma cradles it." Teshara folded arms. "We hold our rock against sea and realm. We will hold a stone." She gestured. Miners wheeled the cart away into vault corridor. Her eyes softened. "But speak sense at banquet tonight. Show me you can anchor fear. Perhaps I'll listen." Feasts at Casterly Rock glittered with uneasy wealth. Gold cups, gold plates. Yet wine tasted flat, harvests still thin. Jon sat beside Arya near dais. Ghost slunk below benches. Nemirian roosted on a scaffold outside arrow slits, growling at gulls. Flicker of dawn perched on crossbeam overhead, unseen by most guests. Teshara toasted ancestor kings, toasted new age of fortune. Lutes strummed, dancers twirled. Beneath polite laughter, Jon sensed tremors, plates rattling at odd intervals. Sweat on servants' brows, frosting then melting. The meteor stirred the castle's bones. Midway through courses, a muffled boom quivered floorboards. Goblets toppled. Guests gasped. Teshara waved for calm, but another boom followed. Louder, deeper. The vault, Jon realized. He rose. Arya mirrored. They sprinted down spiral stairs, Ghost and a pair of wary guards. Heat blasted first, then a gust so chill it rhymed torches mid-flare. At vault doors, smoke hissed under thresholds white with frost. A guard lunged to open, but the bronze handle scalded, then froze, snapping. Jon plunged shoulder, doors burst inward. The shard lay on dais, cracks zigzagging across surface veins, flaring red and blue in alternating pulses. Around it sprawled miners, some clutching ears, others frozen mid-scream, statues of rhyme. One still breathed but chest steamed, skin cracked like clay pot. Jon knelt, channels of power roiling. The shard was birthing smaller shards with each pulse, ejecting them like eggs. They embedded in floor, each humming its own discord. Arya dashed among victims cutting cloth, dragging survivors out. Flicker of dawn leapt onto dais, tiny palm pressed to stone, humming a lullaby of the children. Hi. Lilting. Jon joined, layering his breath of frost. Then warmth. Then both. The shard's throbbing slowed, but each cycle demanded more strength. It drank his equilibrium like parched earth. Ghost howled. Nemirian's roar shivered granite walls as it shot frost flame through a window, ceiling spreading fissures. Teshara burst in behind guards, eyes wild. She saw ragged men shivering, floors cracked, meteor ablaze. Guilt flickered, but pride fought it. If we temper it. She insisted, voice cracking. Smelt core, chill housing we could. It drinks pride, Jon said hoarsely. Help me bury it deep now. Gendry's absence weighed heavy. No star iron basin to contain. Jon thought fast. The rock's lower mines cut into magma veins, old tunnels where smiths had smelted gold in ancient days. If they lowered the shard there, the heat might cradle the cold, sealing war inside rock. Teshara hesitated once more, then ripped off her circlet and flung it aside. Open the deep shaft, she commanded. Chaos turned drill. Guards formed chain. They hauled the shard on sleds coated in pitch to survive extremes. Jon and Flicker of Dawn walked beside, weaving breaths to keep pulses subdued. Arya guided survivors. Some still living sang low to keep courage. Down spiral ramps they descended, air growing sweltering yet occasionally knifed by icicle gusts that shattered stalactites. At the shaft's lip glowed a lake of molten gold ore, red as dawn. Jon stared at shimmering surface, craters burping fumes. It wants sky, he murmured. It will have starfire, to cool its heart. Flicker of Dawn answered cryptically. The child plucked a small acorn from pouch, its shell etched in moonscript, and placed it atop the shard before miners hoisted with chains. Then one by one they heaved. The stone floated a breath above crucible mouth. Jon poured a final cord of warmth cold around it. The acorn cracked, releasing scent of pine and a glitter of silver seeds. Together shard and seeds plunged, sizzling, into the magma. A shockwave rocked tunnels. Gold roared, climbed shaft walls, then subsided, surface smoothing to mirror. Silence stretched, until thin shoots of crystalline white sprouted from molten calm, instantly cooling pathways where they grew. Roots of frost anchored into gold, hemming in heat. Jon exhaled, twin cores eased. Teshara bowed head. The rock owes you. She retrieved her circlet from floor, its wheat stalks melted half away, then handed it to Jon. A token. That we remember humility. He shook head. Melt it down. Forge plows. She laughed, a sound half sob. A Lannister plow. Now there's irony richer than gold. Days later, they stood on a cliff where morning surf hammered galleys. Teshara's smiths labored behind, recasting festival gold into implements for valley farmers. Jon watched cloud break, a gull bark, sail west. Balashra's first mission of teaching across seas, now accompanied by 2 maesters, and a septa sworn to record new harmonies. The world's healing threads were spreading. Arya approached, dusting palms. Flicker of Dawn says cracks in the far east again. Some warlocks weaving eclipse shade. Jon nodded. We sail soon. But not alone. Behind Arya trotted a dozen figures. Alaris, who had voyaged urgent after harvest revival. Loras, robes darkened by new sigils. A coastal druid from Baraton. An Ibanese carver carrying ice runes. 2 ironborn saltwives who learned to still hurricanes by weaving seizings. The fellowship Arya had demanded. They bowed, not in fealty but readiness. Jon felt weight lighten. He turned, faced them under rising sun. Balance does not live in one heart. It lives where hearts join. Together, we'll cross narrow seas and wide. We'll mend long nights and scorching dawns. When I falter, another will breathe the next breath. Ben? Nemirian shrieked approval, wings casting twin shadows. One pale, one dark. Over cliffs. Ghost barked once, trotting among new companions to sniff hands, claim them pack. They embarked that noon on 3 sleek cogs. As sails bellied with wind, Jon watched Casterly Rock shrink. Tishara stood atop battlements, golden hair glinting though crownless, waving a forge-black plowshare overhead like a banner of altered destiny. Between her and the departing masts, gulls wheeled in currents neither hot nor cold, but keen with promise. Out upon the sunset sea, clouds gathered. A braid of thunderheads striped silver and vermilion. Jon breathed. The air tasted of challenge, ripe and daunting. Yet when he exhaled, wind steadied, sails filled, and the ship surged, balanced upon 2 forces, in unseen accord. Around him his fellowship felt it too, their smiles small but fierce, like new stars sharp against dusk's veil. They sailed west, east, wherever edges frayed. Behind them, in vineyard and mine and fisher cove, sprouts pushed from soil, neither parched nor drowned. Dew-kissed petals yet spared mold. Hearths burned bright without smoke choking rafters. Tiny testimonies that balance, once shared, needed no avatar. Only caretakers willing to kneel, to breathe, and to listen for the delicate music between flame's roar and winter's hush.